My name is Faria and today I'm having a presentation about my lovely homeland Iran. Before we start, I'm gonna thank my husband Hossein for so much work and effort he put into editing this video. I wanted to start with Persian cuisine, music and dance. But since I noticed that people usually don't have a general idea about the country Iran, I decided to do first a little bit of history and then continue with Persian art. Iran means the land of Aryan. On the Iranian plateau, there were three major Aryan groups of people, each dominating certain parts of it. The whole plateau became united when Persian Empire of Achaemenid under Cyrus the Great conquered Iranian plateau, Lydia, and now Babylonian Empire. At its greatest territorial extent, the Achaemenid Empire ruled almost 44% of the human population of their time and on almost 5.5 million square kilometers.
Over 2,500 years ago, Cyrus the Great built one of the greatest and most extraordinary capitals on earth, from which he ruled most of the then known world. His capital city was called Pasargadae.
The empire was founded as a multi-state empire. Each state was governed by a governor called satrapy, allowing a certain amount of autonomy with regards of some general rules, total freedom of religion and language. They introduced a regulated and sustainable tax system that was precisely tailored to each satrapy based on their supposed productivity and their economic potential. Almost all inscriptions in the capitals of empire were written in three languages. This is another example of the extent of emperor's respect for different cultures and languages among people of Persia. The government communicated with all of people with Aramaic language, so Persians, along with other groups of people in the empire, had to learn this in order to communicate with the government. Persian gardening is one elegant feature of people's love for nature and artistic design. The legacy of Persian gardens throughout the Middle East and South Asia starts in the Achaemenid period, especially with the construction of Pasargadae by Cyrus the Great. In fact, the English word paradise derives from the Old Persian pardis, used to describe the walled gardens of ancient Persia. Characteristics including flowing watercourses, fountains and water channels, a structured orientational scheme Chahar Bagh, and a variety of flower and fruit-bearing trees brought from across the empire, all key features that served as a key inspiration for Islamic gardens, ranging from Spain to India. The famous Alhambra complex in Spain, built by Andalusian Arabs, Safavid parks and boulevards at Isfahan, and Mughal gardens in India and Pakistan, including those of the Taj Mahal, are all descendants of this cultural tradition.
Our findings from our geomagnetic surveys show that, unlike other ancient cities, there was no rampart or military fortification surrounding this huge complex at Pasargadae.
A capital city without fortification was quite unique in the ancient world. Babylon and Persepolis, for instance, had massive fortifications.
And I think that Cyrus may have been quietly emphasizing the strength of his empire, which didn't stand in need of any static defenses.
What does this say? No defense necessary. It can be seen and is wanted, it's desired to be appreciated by everyone, but this idea of open access is also profound. Paradise is for everyone.
Another truly astonishing Persian accomplishment was the construction of the Royal Road in the 5th century BC.
Beside the famous Royal Road, another highway of command was the Great Khorasan Road, an informal mercantile route that originated in the fertile lowlands of Mesopotamia, went through the Iranian plateau and Afghanistan into the Central Asian regions of Samarkand, Merv, and Fargana, allowing the construction of frontier cities like Syropolis. Following Alexander's conquest, this highway allowed for the spread of cultural syncretic fusions like Greco-Buddhism into Central Asia and China, as well as empires like the Kushan, Indo-Greek, and Parthian to profit from trade between East and West. This route was greatly rehabilitated and formalized during the Abbasid Caliphate, during which it developed into a major component of the famed Silk Road. They formed an innovative postal system throughout the empire based on several relay stations called chaparkhane. Efficient transport infrastructures such as roads and highways, caravanserais at specific intervals, and relay stations enabled the couriers to reach the remotest of areas in 15 days. Herodotus observed that there is nothing in the world that travels faster than these Persian couriers. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these courageous couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Alexander the Great conquered Iran around 330 BC. Following his death around 7 years later, a division in his empire is triggered. Finally, on 247 BC, Parthian Empire unites Persian territories once again, establishing a second Persian Empire. In the 7th century, Arab invasion brings an end to Sasanian Empire and almost a major part of their civilization. Burning Tishfun's library, all written literature of Persian territory, and killing everyone who speaks or writes in Persian for hundreds of years could end up in a total loss of our identity, like what happened in many other cultural territories in which Islam was adopted. But Persians have always managed to keep their key features of identity unharmed through thousands of years of vicissitudinous turn of events. Through Mughal invasion, hundreds of years of Islam, and so many years of different contemporary dictatorships. Even now, people have to fight for their annual traditional celebrations and even lose lives for that. But these are topics we don't discuss in this presentation. The Pazyryk carpet is the oldest known carpet on Earth, and it has been dated back to the 5th century BC. It was discovered in the Pazyryk Valley in the late 1940s. The carpet's schemes are very much like the Achaemenid art and the design shown in the Takht-i-Jamshid. However, there are so many doubts about the origins of the carpet. Some say it was woven by Medes or Parthians, while the powerful theory at the time says that it was a handicraft of Saka or Saki people. Whichever is the right theory here, the known history of Persian carpet goes back to the 5th century BC. Persians used woven handicrafts from thousands of years ago. At Apadana reliefs from 5th century BC, you can see people carrying delicate fine cotton towels on their arms before the king. Persian carpets were also mentioned around 400 BC by the Greek author Xenophon in his book Anabasis. Xenophon describes Persian carpets as precious and worthy to be used as diplomatic gifts. It is unknown if these carpets were pile woven or produced by another technique, like flat weaving or embroidery, but it is interesting that the very first reference to Persian carpets in the world literature already puts them into a context of luxury, prestige, and diplomacy. You can also see at the Apadana reliefs the very first evidence of using spray perfumes instead of the usual old perfumes used in ancient world. Did you know that name of Cyrus is mentioned in the Bible more than 30 times?
We all know how Cyrus freed the Jews from captivity in Babylonia so they could return to their homelands. But this was not the only case. It happened later in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah as officers of the king who came back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. They did the same thing in Egypt and in Babylonia and among the Greeks of Asia Minor. In fact, they are the first example of international religious freedom that we find in the history of mankind.
Only one king in history at this time, Cyrus, talks about the release of enslaved people.
The Persians sought to establish peace where once other nations had carried out acts of carnage and pillage during the previous centuries. The mighty and powerful shall not disturb the weak. This was the inclination of the great nation of Persia.
Cyrus the Great's bequest of religious freedom and tolerance was not forgotten. And Xenophon's book about Cyrus, entitled Cyropedia, inspired future generations of world leaders, from Alexander the Great to Thomas Jefferson. These are indeed the honorable virtues of a truly great man, a true prince of Persia, whose name was Cyrus.
Contributions of Persians to what is known as Islamic art and literature is massive. Greatest philosophers, physicians, poets, musicians, and scientists of Islamic Golden Age are originally Persians who their works were inevitably wrote and taught in Arabic language. Correction of Arabic grammar and linguistics was only the beginning of Persian endeavors to yield the most beautiful literature legacy of Islamic cultural territory. The very first book on Arabic grammar was written by Sibawayh or Abu Bashr Amr, who was a Persian grammarian and author. Iran is filled with tombs of poets and authors, and as Professor M. Jan Rybka, the Czech Orientalist, after mentioning the influence of Persia on Islamic art, states, the Persians possess in general a very developed artistic sense. I even say that the Iranians are the French of the East, for both the literary and artistic production is very extensive and has an immeasurable value. I am concluding my speech on literature by reading you a poem from Omar Khayyam, an Iranian mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher on 1050 AC. You are a compound of the elements 4. The 7 planets rule your favorite life. Drink wine, for I have said 1,000 times that you will not return. Once you're gone, you're gone. Being the birthplace of Islamic architecture, profound connection between Sassanid architecture and that of Islamic is observed. Iranian architecture makes use of abundant symbolic geometry. Using pure forms such as the circle and square, and plans are based on often symmetrical layouts featuring rectangular courtyards and halls. Few of so many elements of Persian architecture are briefly described as follows. Orosi. This is a design of doors and windows in which wooden or metal frames are used for colorful glasses, and it is so dreamy in the noon when the sunlight comes through it. Gushware or earrings. These are small rooms at 2 sides of the main hall with separate entrance and are usually used as a place for guests to sleep or for music players. Taq or taq. This is the entrance of important places, like places of worship or simply gathering spots of people like bazaar. Frontage. This is a vast roofless area inside the properties like holy mosques, king or ruler's residence or bazaars. The distance between entrance and the hall door was an indicator of the importance of that place.